It's going to be a fun event, and it has been a fun event to this day, at this time. But I think now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes, and I think the last session probably proved some of that to some of you. Got some great information, and I think that Ray's done a great job at this event. What I'm going to be introducing to you is something that all of you know. So let's just start from there. I mean, most of you understand the concepts as manufacturers, as consultants. You're dealing with an environment that's changing. For the last 5 years to 7 years, all of us have been challenged with cyber and convergence and all of these things that we've been hearing, right? I'm going to actually, unfortunately, become very real today. We're going to start getting into the reality of terminology, of process, of how this is all coming together. And what is the destination of smart buildings, smart cities? What does it mean, right? And in that case, you're going to learn a lot of things that are going to be eye-opening in regards to the decisions you have to make from the standpoint of as you consult, as you manufacture products, as you assess. All of these things are going to be things you have to weigh in. And I think that what I want to do is, of course, get you in a position at the end to be defensible. The goal for me is to make you, give you the tools and the knowledge so that when you go back to your engineers and go back to your consultants, you actually have the information you need to do those assessments properly, to manufacture products efficiently, to ensure that you do it in a secure way, and that it puts you in a position where you have success on solid ground. And that's going to be something that's very important. So a lot of you know me. I'm not going to go through all my torrid history. I mean, some of you, I've been in the industry since basically 89, 1990. It was the Rand Corporation, worked with the Secretary of the State Department. And from there, went to integration, from there to basically assessments of facilities for the U.S. military, U.S. Navy. I've seen from barriers all the way to integrated platforms, VMS platforms, access control in the most secure ways, critical infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I ended up in IT security, then cybersecurity, and then back to this wonderful world of physical security. Because I saw that, 5 years ago, we were in trouble, to be honest with you. And today we're a little bit better off than we were 5 years ago, but we're still haggling with ourselves, haggling with our industry, trying to figure out why we're in this mess. So today we're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about how to resolve that to certain degrees. Now, all the answers are not going to be here, but you're going to get a lot of good information. That's really critical for me. So what are we going to talk about? I know it seems like a lot, but it actually isn't, because once you start going through it, you'll start realizing what you're going to get from it. Understand the current state regarding converged security and the smart cities building movement. So, and the smart cities and smart buildings movement. Map the growth of technology to business process and compliance. Very key. This is going to be most important in regards to building solutions and building products. Describe the methodologies bringing IT, operational technology, and physical security. I meant, when I say OT, some people don't know what that means. All right, so, and it's together to properly align people, process, and technology with the goal of implementing today's converged security solution. So remember, I want to first of all, get a misnomer out. Convergence is not just IT and physical security, the connectivity. Everybody has a misnomer on that. That's not what we're talking about in terms of convergence. We're talking about all things. All things. IT, OT, physical security, and IoT, people, process, and technology within the business environment. Every segment of the business speaking with governance and policy and procedures across the entire company. That's what people are talking about in regards to convergence. Is that clear? All right. So examples of supply chain to the implementation of smart cities and smart buildings. When we talk about supply chain, we're talking about all those products that are coming to the market in every segment of smart buildings and smart cities. And trust me, it's growing exponentially. And so what I want you to all be prepared for is how your solutions, your products, your consultancy is handling that explosion of technology. And then explain the Converged Security Standard, which is what I've been working with NIST to develop a new standard across 800-171 using CMMI rate of maturity. That is a process we've been working on. We're getting there. It's questionnaires. It's going to be self-assessment. It's going to be based upon the ability for all of you to use a formidable standard that you can bring into not only the consulting environment, but also the manufacturing environment. Get you in a position to be defensible to a certain degree. So, what is a pane of glass? Well, so this is your world, right? This is the world you all live in, believe it or not, in regards to OT, IoT, and IT. Now you say, where am I? Physical security. Guess what? You're in the middle of this mess. All of these things are going on around you. Big data, IT systems, artificial intelligence, communication, cloud, city solutions, industry. So each one of you builds solutions that help solve some of these problems in regards to the physical controls. Now that's a word I want you to remember. Physical controls. You are in the middle of evaluating and defining physical controls within this environment. Now, most people are going to go and say, but I used to own that responsibility. I used to talk to the physical security assessment, the facility director, and the facility director was my friend. But what happened to my facility director? What happened to him? You still work with him, but what about his power within facilities? Does he have other people he has to work with now? And who are those people? IT, OT, IoT. When we talk about IoT, we're talking about disparate devices, disparate products. Here's the thing. The world you used to work in had this guy who was your friend. Today, that person revolves around a whole ecosystem of products and solutions. And guess what those products and solutions do today? They don't just solve a problem of access or identity or entry. They solve a problem of building controls. They solve a problem about air controls. They solve a problem about transportation. They solve a problem about all the things that present a business opportunity for the buyer. So if I own a manufacturer of cars, right, am I just worried about a guy entering the building anymore? Am I? No. What am I worried about? Tell me. Somebody can answer that question. A breach, right? Data breach, IP information leaving the building. Wow, 10 years ago, was I thinking about that? No. In fact, think about this. The Target breach happened a little over 10 years ago. Not even that. I mean, I think it was like 10 or 11 years ago. Somebody can probably, answer that question. But this all started with the fact that cyber, became real. People actually were entering the building in a different way. They were not turning a key. They weren't getting in the front door. They were getting it from another side of the fence, which is basically our data, right? Our information. Well, here's the fascinating part about that. So we went from protecting the door to protecting the data, right? So we all, guess what? Rushed to the money, right? All of us did. Every single one of us created every single solution known to man in the last 10 years so that we could protect the data. But guess what we forgot? Oh, the door. We still hadn't figured that one out. In fact, we haven't figured out identity either. You think facial recognition is perfected? No. So here's what I want you to really understand. That you are important. You are important. But you're not as important as you think. So that's the first thing I want you to be very clear about. And I hate to tell you, and I love you, all of you, but that means you got to be brighter, smarter, and more capable than you ever have been to be successful. You deserve it for entering late. You're a bad student. So the reality is this, all right? We have to be concerned of the things we do not know, but we also have to be concerned about the things we do know and do nothing about. All of you know this, but all of you choose not to know. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, no, I do. No, you don't. Because if you did, half this would be gone already. This problem is about us. It's about you. It's about me. It's about us. This is, unfortunately, the new world. Now, people are saying, Pierre, my small business or my small manufacturer, my small supplier, he's not worried about this. I said, yes, he is. In fact, his entire supply chain is based on this. The world that we're talking about is layered, and look where it all starts. The physical infrastructure. All of you have built a career on the basic foundational principles of protection. Our goal is to protect people and property. That's what we were raised to do. We either carried a gun, we either worked in the intelligence, we either worked in physical security, we worked in the alarm environment, we started in video, we started in access control. We understand the basic principles and tenets of physical controls. But unfortunately, our world slipped away. It slipped away into another world that we don't know what happened. We're no longer as in control. We now are trying to speak a new language. We're trying to talk about InfoSec and cyber assessments and penetration testing and vulnerability assessments. And we're talking about OT controls and SCADA systems and PLCs. And all of you are going, well, yeah, PLC. I used to work on that. There was a transit line in the middle of New York and they used a PLC and it was a switch on and off. And I get that. But they don't understand how it's all interconnected to the universe that they started with. So all of a sudden, right, we went from physical infrastructure to now worried about IT infrastructure and operations. Look at how far down that is. Do you understand that 90% of the audience right now in this community are working in this world? That's it. That's where you work. However, what's interesting is that 90% of the products you produce and work under in regards to consultants affect this. Now, there's a big problem because between all of that, there's a lot of disparity in regards to your competency, in regards to how to ensure that you're aligning the business operations, the compliance and regulation to the technology you produce or recommend. Some of you have organizations that get some of this, which is, and I've seen great growth, thank God. It was needed. But for guys in the consulting arena, we have to start realizing that everything is interconnected from urban planning, government operations, digital networks and services, and civil business and organizations. Each one is relying on another. And here's the problem. Yes?
So how does, within that model, where does the supply chain elements, how do those overlay with this model?
So we're going to talk about it. Yeah, there's a slide that actually explains specifically how the overlay takes place. And it'll give you kind of just the dynamic in terms of where you fit and how it fits. And I think it'll be kind of an eye-opener because I think you're going to realize, oh boy, I really had better understand about secured storage, secured communications, secured identity, and secured entry. And we'll talk about that. So then the building environment, right? So we talk about the smart cities, or let's say the holistic environment of all security. We have to talk about the building environment. We have to talk about all the different steps. Building blocks to successful smart building solutions. Metadata and how it's used. Does everybody understand what metadata is? Yes or no? Just nod yes or no. Okay, so very important. Every product you create or every product that's in an environment has data that it streams, that it gives. It's information, right? So it then turns into big data down the road. Inevitably, you reach a point where big data exists. Do you understand that almost 70% of the environment that we work in, all the businesses we touch, do you understand that they do not do data discovery and they do not know where their data is? So you, in your infinite wisdom, which I'm very pleased because we're all part of, I'm as dumb as everyone else, so don't, I say this broadly, right? We're giving them tons of data. Oh, but sir, it's in the cloud. Ladies and gentlemen, their data is not in the cloud. They are transacting in the cloud. Their data is stored in their building. They may even have redundancy in their building. Did you understand the vulnerabilities you're creating for your client? Now, I'm just being facetious right now, because our goal is to give them more data, right? More information. But as we develop more technology, without building an infrastructure that ensures that they can use that data or they can protect that data, then all you're giving them is a quicksand solution that will inevitably sink. Cohesive safety and security solutions that correspond to business operations and human interaction. Think about that. Cohesive safety and security solutions that correspond to business and human interaction. Behavior, business operations, compliance and regulation. Here's the thing. In everything you do going forward as a security professional, you must take those into account. When you do an assessment, you can't just take a look at all the windows that are open or the doors that are propped. You have to understand that if you do not do this for your client, first of all, you're not helping your client. Second of all, whatever solution you create is a Band-Aid upon a problem they already have. Your choice. If you want to continue the insanity, please go ahead, because I'll be rich someday just following up on your mistakes. IT, OT, physical security, cohesion from entry to the back office. So here's the thing. Boy, I've had these arguments with everybody for years. Yeah, this compliance, I mean, I get it. You know, God, this convergence stuff, stop talking about convergence. I said, you know what? I can't help that you used that as a marketing tool 10 years ago or 15 years ago and didn't know what it meant. Is that my fault? Look, we have to understand that the liability that is installed in every environment that we do a risk assessment on, and do not uncover that liability from the business operation elements and the compliance elements, shame on you. Because you are not going to be able to give them the solution required to ensure that the longevity of their system is future-proofed for whatever happens in the future when we, as a world, are fully connected in every way, which, would you say that we're almost, I'd say 50% there? Kind of scary, right? So the reality is that you have to understand all of this, because it is critical when you do an assessment to evaluate it in an appropriate way. So I'm also saying that the manufacturers have a responsibility as well. It says, whoa, wait a minute, I thought that was a consultant job. Well, let's just put it this way. When a consultant does an assessment and may talk about business operations, may talk about human interaction, say, look, they understand that, they're working for a big, technology firm on the West Coast and wants an open environment, freedom and roses and butterflies and rainbows, and doesn't really care about the real factor of security, but that's we just want that, right? Okay, fine. You write that in the report and says, great, they love butterflies and rainbows. But the reality is they're not secure. They really don't want to be secure to a certain degree because they don't want a feeling of security. So we have to understand that. We have to put in our report. But here's the problem. The manufacturer comes behind it and says, wait a minute, we're the manufacturer. We have the best solution for you. In fact, we can do all of these wonderful things. From solutions to products to sensors to all these things, and we can solve the problem. Consultant goes, oh, I'm done. Well, listen, here's the thing. If you're a manufacturer, you have to take a responsibility to own that to a certain degree. You have to say, okay, wait, before we start, let's just talk about this with the consultant, and let's actually look at it from a holistic approach and say, we maybe need to do some more work in regards to evaluating and speaking to HR, speaking to finance, speaking to all the stakeholders, and having a true visual of where IT, OT, physical security is in regards to the use of these type of product solutions or systems. I know there's one guy over there that does that all the time. But you know what? The reality is this. If a manufacturer were to help do that, can you imagine the future? If everyone worked together to a certain degree and actually evaluated things on a one pane of glass solution, so they actually got the solution required for not only the client, but also maybe their compliance and regulations they have to follow. See, and also think about this, right? If the manufacturer tells the client, no, you can't love butterflies and rainbows and be secure. Well, what do you mean? I mean, I'm sure you've got something. You got cameras, you got thousands of cameras. Well, yeah, that's forensic, right? Well, sometimes. Okay, all right. We're going to talk about AI, because AI doesn't exist. So we're going to talk about all that wonderful stuff. Sorry. I'm going to talk. It's okay. So converged security and safety in the cloud, right? So we talk about, we'll just say video intelligence, smart cities and video intelligence scales down to include all of these things. This comes with the question you just asked. Isn't that amazing how that happened?
Great minds think alike.
I am just telling you. So yes, so video has become a part of the fabric of using it not only to detect, right, to respond, at times to prevent, but it's really hard. And it has to have a lot of factors involved in that, in the layered approach. You must not use it solely to build into this environment without the concept of entry in terms of prevention, in terms of access, in terms of identity, in terms of processes in regards to building and policy and procedures. Then we have a potential solution with video. It crosses over an entire landscape, even in a small 3-block area. All of these things are somewhat interconnected. Now, in a company's environment, especially one that has a campus environment or has multi-locations or is global, this is even more important because every bit of information that's being disseminated is being potentially used, unless they don't know where their data is, or they haven't done data discovery, or they are segmenting data and they're not communicating in each environment, which is exactly what takes place. You could create the best video management solution in the history of video management. But if you've siloed it so that only those that need to use it, and don't see it across the entire environment and being able to use in terms the entire business environment, it's worthless. Because invariably, they're only going to see a number and they're going to say, why did we spend this much money for that? Because you never did and correlated all the areas of the business. You never converged that solution in a correlated event management process that gave you the power to actually back you up. Right? Right. Interconnectivity of technology centered around connecting buildings and cities. That's what we're talking about. Now, all this is holistic right now. We're going to get into more detail, but I'm going to set the plate. So when we talk about smart buildings, right? Power and bidirectional data communication, how the interaction of all this takes place, even to, if we talk about electrical storage just alone, to actually manage an interconnected city or an interconnected building. Think about this, right? When's the last time, you talk to your client, is maybe a large client, they have an infrastructure that you're consulting against. You're actually, the supplier of the product. Say it's a VMS system or access control platform that's fairly robust. You have all these different elements that are connected. I says, well, let's talk about your power. Oh, you mean my power? No, your energy. What happens if something goes down from the standpoint of critical infrastructure and you can't keep this running? Well, we have battery backup. 20 minutes. See, those are the small questions you have to ask to make you important, because if you don't tell them from the standpoint of, I got to know that you can actually keep this building moving because everything is interconnected in regards to the success of my product. If I'm going to consult or I'm going to be involved in integration and I put these products together and I don't ask those important questions, What happens if something happens? Even if, I even do this. Ask them if they have a COOP. Who knows what a COOP? Everybody knows a COOP, right? Continuing operation plan. So everybody's going, well, I have a disaster recovery plan. No. Do you have a COOP? Because the continuum of operation plan is directly aligned with the technology you're implementing. It's specific to the security infrastructure and the security technology. If you go Google COOP, there's an entire process that was created by DHS for everyone, which nobody ever looks at, which is okay. But trust me, that's a roadmap that's simple. You can hand that to them and says, I want to see this. Because then you're going to have a lot of the information you need initially to start helping you guide you in a roadmap that's required to build a smart buildings and smart cities environment. So why do I care? Why do I could just walk away and not care and hope that the industry figures it out. Well, guess what? I live in this world. I use everything that you could screw up. I take transportation. I'm in a smart cities environment. I use energy, I use healthcare, I use data-driven business. I work in the business environment and industrial environment. Everything there on that map I use. Everything's interconnected in regards to the processes and policies as well as the products you're creating. You're going, well, wait a minute, no. I'm just building an infrastructure just for this company. But listen to me. Here's the interesting part, right? Your products, the evolution of what you do will invariably affect what the city and municipality does if you're working with a large business or even a small business. Because now what's going on is the cities and the municipalities are asking for data. They're asking for information. In terms of critical events, what are they doing? They're looking at your video. They're asking to see your video. What took place? Wouldn't it be nice if you had it done right so that you actually can do that? But here's the problem, is that if you do it incorrectly and work on and build it on quicksand, they'll never be able to use it. And they'll actually ask the question, says, well, I don't understand why you did it this way, right? Now, it's always great to get a black eye, right? No. But it's not good to get a black eye from a city or municipality who's talking to the end user and saying, why did your consultant recommend this? This makes no sense. See, the thing is this is what I want everyone to understand, that this world has changed so fast that we still are using old tactics to build solutions. And we have to understand that even in this quagmire that we put ourselves under, we have to start evaluating things correctly in this pane of glass. We have to look at cyber, we have to look at operational, and we look at physical controls, all three at the same time. Because why? It's about event management. Here's the interesting part. Most companies, mid-cap and beyond, not yet in the small business arena, but that's coming. And I think Genetec is doing a lot of that in that small business arena as well, and of course others as well, because it doesn't matter. But here's what's interesting, is that when they are looking at data and protection of their environment, they're looking at correlating events from IT, operational technology, logistics, physical security, and beyond. You know the first thing they're looking at today? They're looking at social analyzers. Who's talking about me? Do you realize that actually today is the first part of creating a security solution for a client? That's what they want to see first. You may say, wait a minute, hold on. The doors don't have to do with that. Wait a minute, you're confusing me. And we'll talk about that too, because people don't understand, when we talk about these issues with these clients, they get that there's 4 walls around their building. They get they have to protect, and they have to protect the parking lots and all of these things. But the first thing they're worried about is what? Reputation. They care about the reputation. They care about what somebody's saying about them that could say, hey, lead to a potential event. And where did that start, by the way? San Bernardino. Do you realize that San Bernardino was the hot flash, the flash that actually lit the fire on being concerned about social analysis? Because they had clear proof that these guys were talking about a terrorist act at that healthcare conference. And they knew that something was going to happen, meaning if they had paid attention to it. Every municipality today is looking at it. If you look at bids right now, go to your bid sheet and look at what they're buying that. Companies right now are implementing that. The next step beyond that is identity and entry. They're concerned about that. Then they're concerned about video and access control as part of that, okay? Then they're looking at logistics in terms of how they're actually managing their business. Then they're looking at operational, right? With that, they're looking at IT. And they're bringing it all into one room. So the evolution of the GSOC, you know, we've always talked about how things are controlled. It's changed. They're now, in effect, designing rooms for their entire secured environment. They've got IT in the room, they've got physical security, and they've got operational. They can respond immediately to a critical event because they see the correlated events. We call it kill chain. So in the IT world, we called kill chain of when we identified a potential event, how we responded to an event, and how we mitigated an event. Sound familiar? It's the same thing. So what they're doing is they're creating converged kill chains in IT and physical security. In fact, most of the guys are going to seminars that are actually talking about that because they're going to the IT seminars and the IT guys are saying, build a kill chain process. So I have my IT guys here and they're shaking their head. And we're telling them, build a kill chain, define it. Give me processes, define how you're doing it. Where are your vulnerability assessments? How are you evaluating the vulnerability assessments to the products and technology, and how are you looking at your business operational to ensure that your risk posture is acceptable? I said a lot right there. That's what they're doing. And you are walking in, do your assessment, your designs, but you're not asking those questions. And guess what they're doing? Is they're looking at you going, do you understand what we're doing here? We don't have time for this. So what's your solution? Quick, help me out. Now, if you came up and actually started asking those type of questions and started asking about the kill chain, looking at their vulnerability assessments, defining what they're doing in terms of IT and OT, how are you bringing this together? Trust me, they're all ears. You're going, wait a minute, you're speaking my language. Now I understand how, so let me explain how we're going to put this together in regards to defining the roadmap for video and access control and access identity to entry. What are we using for identity to define the person as he enters? So here's the interesting part. I'm going to get right to the fact of where things are, where this is all happening. So car charging highway, right? How this is all interconnected. Jinan, China. Okay, future highways will be as smart as the cars driving on them. A new intelligent highway in developing with feature sensors, solar panels, and battery chargers, which together will be able to provide cars with on-the-go charging. Really? I mean, the first section of the highway, which is 1,080 meters long, can generate enough energy to power its own lights along with 800 homes. Now, all of you are going, what does this have to do with security? Everything. Everything. Because every one of you have to understand where technology is leading people. Why are they looking at you with cross eyes? Because security has been a cost since the day you put a door contact on a door back 25, 30 years ago. All you were is a cost. In fact, you're worse than insurance. So here's the problem. Everything people are developing today are ROIs. You romp in with just the basic tenements of a physical security assessment, and all we talk about, threats and vulnerabilities, the over countermeasures, all they're looking at is cost. Well, shit, you're just going to add more cost to me. I need to find a better way. And more liability if you don't do it. You got it. Data center powered heating systems. Teaming up with the city's power grid operators and heating company, Stockholm developed a system that uses excess heat from local data centers to warm the homes of thousands of its residents. Stockholm's aim is for 10% of its heating needs to be met in the excess data center heat by 2035. How many people work on data centers in this room, right? Well, a lot of people. Can you imagine, right? We're going, well, I'm not even thinking about that. Do you know why you're not thinking about that? Because you're not talking about their business. You're not talking about where they're going, what the future is. You're talking about the current state. And we have a little presentation, what slide on that. You're talking about their current state. You're not giving a true roadmap which actually makes sense to them. They just see you as a cost. Fine, we'll just put it in. My friend was a nuclear, my friend did nuclear physical security, and he gets it. We're just going to build like a bomb shelter, and we're good to go. But guess what? That's not enough. And then when the guy comes back and says, why am I spending all this money on this? Well, because there's a requirement that you have to do that. Well, I know, but I mean, can we just do it this way? I says, well, you can. I said, oh, fine, we'll do it that way. But if you start talking this language, all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute. Oh, how does this interconnect? What can it do to help me? How does this look to my stockholders? How does this look to my municipality? How does this look to my business? Oh, my Lord, you've just opened Pandora's box. Network of flood detecting sensors, Buenos Aires, Argentina. After a record-breaking flood devastated the city in 2013, cause and effect, Buenos Aires set out to bolster the city's response to future crisis. The improvement was a network of storm drain attached sensors, which together measure the speed, direction, and level of water as it flows through them, allowing the city to predict floods in certain areas using sensor data. The project will directly benefit 3 million people, 236,000 of which are particularly exposed when floods hit. Safety. So all of a sudden you're going, oh, wait a minute. Safety, security, implementation of technology, product development, consulting.
Large-scale impact.
Large-scale impact. This is real, ladies and gentlemen. This is not figurative facts. These are real things that are going on today in your world. And I'm trying to give you an insight on how you have to be aware of the fact that you now need to create those ROIs. You have to have that language, starting today. It's not just about threats times vulnerabilities equals countermeasures. Safety, snow melting systems. Well, the city of Holland, Michigan, hey, Holland, Michigan, they've got Michiganders all over the place here, has got an average of 60 inches of snowfall a year since 2013. Most residents are unlikely to ever notice. Beneath the city is a tubing system that uses excess heat for the nearby power plant to melt snow as it collects on the city's pavements and sidewalks. This reduces pedestrian headaches and also the risk of winter traffic accidents. Now, some of you residents in Michigan know that, but do you understand how powerful that is? Just even talking about that, right? The conversation. Because products that you're creating and that you're consulting for, right? How does this affect your mitigation of risk? Oh, it does, because let me tell you something. If you present concepts such as this to a client and says, well, by the way, the sensors we're putting in and say this, so we'll just say your safety measures, right? As you enter your building, right? You've been using salt for how many years? You've got 3,000 people entering this building, every day. How about if you actually look at the right solution that potentially could help you? And in fact, this can all be connected to our infrastructure to actually support, your management of threat and vulnerability. Because that's important. Now, some would say, God, Pierre, that's a reach. No, it's not, because it's all on the same network. It's all in the same environment. It's all connected. Data's data. Remember we started with metadata? What did we say about metadata? Everybody's producing it. Wouldn't you like to produce it so it creates an ROI for you? Puts you in a better position to actually have a very good conversation with the C-suite? I would say all of you would like that. So then we talk about everyday life, right? All driven traffic systems. Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Kuala Lumpur's population is growing rapidly, and so are the number of cars in the roads. To solve its mounting traffic problem, the city is partnering with outside companies to develop an all-based traffic control system which will monitor driving patterns, video footage, and mapping apps in order to improve traffic efficiencies. A similar project in Hangzhou, China, improved traffic speed by 15%. Who would have thunk? The efficiencies in regards to the global community you're actually going to affect if you actually maybe put the right cameras in, the right sensors in, and you actually correlate it to the community. The things you can do if you're working with large enterprise companies and clients. My God, it's unbelievable actually. But the thing is that I'm not saying that each or one of these or all of these are things you can use, but I want you to be aware of what you are doing in the process of creating smart cities and smart buildings solutions. So we're close to the finish of this one, and we've got plenty of time, so we're good. So everyday life, smart pay as you go. One of the most effective ways of reducing city pollution is to cut down on the amount of time drivers spend searching for parking spaces. London Solution is a smart parking app that tracks open parking spaces in real time and charges drivers based on how long they stay in a spot. Okay, I want you to think about this, how ingenious these are, right? This has happened about 5-6 years ago, right? This is the kind of stuff that's incredible if you start thinking about the world of security and safety, the world of smart cities and smart buildings, all the products, systems, and consulting that you do to help these companies produce solutions that can take the existing systems that you're investing them in or investing in them in and using them for other things. So at the end of the day, right? Connected. IoT is connecting the physical world and the digital world, bringing insight into everything about us. Response. Real-time situational awareness and precise data allows cities and business to personalize. Predictive. Analytics combine data sets to predict events and drive proactive action that shape and accelerate their response. Automated. Recommendations can be routed to machine to automate and optimize some city processes and operations. Here's the interesting part. This is a model you can use for virtually every company in that conversation. I'm not trying, everybody says, oh, it's too big. No, it's not. Shrink it to you. These are the things they're interested in hearing about. They want to know how this is all playing a role in terms of mitigating their liability and risk. Now, here's the interesting part. How do you get into that conversation? So again, we're talking about a small city block environment, but this is the same within a corporation. Operations, we want to reduce costs, improve efficiencies, and understand our city or our business and businesses better. Yeah, wait a minute. Have you heard that before? Have you heard that before? Operation from operations. We want to reduce costs, improve it, right? That's a standard, they'll come back to that all the time. Business, we want to give customers what they want, increase their satisfaction and drive revenues, right? It's for everybody. Risk, we want to protect personal information and reduce our business risk and liability, right? All good so far. We're all getting the same response from the people we work with. Public safety, you want to be safe wherever we are, which is basically your business environment. Transportation, we want to get around easily with convenient and safe transportation. Now here's the fun part, right? In fact, if you take a holistic approach from a business perspective with your client and define, in effect, the technology that actually can do this, and actually present them with real options that actually connect ROI to it, you win the day. Do you think the facility guys are going to say, wow, yeah, I get this total, I'm going to be able to implement? No. No, I need to talk to CFO, I need to talk to CEO, I need to talk to all these people. I want all the stakeholders in the room. So here's the issue. Here's the issue, right? When it boils down to this, okay, the ability to use the deductive reasoning skills that God gave you is really important here. Because all of you have absolute logic. I'm okay. I have absolute logic. You all were born with absolute logic, especially if you're doing this business, you've got logic. But here's what we forgot. We went right to emotion all of a sudden, right? We scream to the dollars. We say, I need a quick solution because these guys got to close a deal. We don't take the time because we're worried we're going to lose the sale. That goes to the consultant as much as the manufacturer. We don't take the time to actually ask the questions because we're afraid they're going to find an answer that prolongs the cycle of purchase. I'm telling you, that is a big problem. And that is the emotion. So we wonder what society is, what's happening with society. What happens to society is that we all have logic, but we're rushing to emotion in everything we do. We stop thinking because technology has taken over your life. Technology is about to take over your life. In fact, it already has. Smart cities and smart buildings are here. They're not going away. IT is not going away. It's not a fad like they talked about 15 years ago. Oh God, how many times people told me, Pierre, you're a fad. I'm not a fad. I'm your worst nightmare. No, anyway. So I want you to be aware of all of that, right? So what are the things you have to be concerned about when you're building this, okay? You have, one of the factors, right? We talked about business operation, making money, ROI. You got to worry about compliance. You got to worry about regulation. Now, is everybody saying, well, you know, I don't get fined all the time. I don't get audited all the time. It says, that's great, but you know what? It's like buying insurance. Someday you're going to run into the wall, right? I mean, it's just inevitable. I mean, I don't care how great of a driver you are. Energy, everyone has physical and cyber controls attached to it in every single regulated market. Be aware. Understand those regulated markets when you produce products as well as when you consult your client. If you're walking into an energy company, you know immediately they're dealing with NERC, SIP, or FERC. Be responsible. Manufacturing. If they're manufacturing for the federal government, they deal with ITAR. They deal with ISO. They deal with the basic tenements of security. EU Safe Harbor, which all these things, I'm going to have a slide real quick about that. Retail, PCI, compliance, right? All of which have physical controls. No, you're not just saying, well, that's a cyber problem. No, cyber has physical controls. That is an ROI that's embedded in the ROI if you're already talking about business issues in the smart cities and smart buildings movement. People are going, God, I thought this was just smart buildings, smart cities. No, it's about everything. Because I am not going to just talk about a hopium drug. I'm going to talk about the reality that you're facing. Every regulated industry faces physical controls that they must adhere to. Building unified entry solutions, as well as any solution, this is just at the entry of getting into an environment, but that relieves the burden of compliance. The future of entry as a security solution rather than simply a building specification. Oh, I just crossed the threshold. Building specifications and architects. Now we're going to talk about the fact that how can I implement a smart buildings and smart cities environment when I have an architect who's talking about butterflies and rainbows? It's kind of hard, right? You're like trying to say, well, look, I'm trying to secure the building, and now you're trying to put me in an undefensible position to do so. But if you start aligning some of this to them, and they say, sir, I love your architectural environment, the creation, it's beautiful. But let me ask you a question. Did you do this so that you can make sure that your client held all the liability? What do you mean liability? Well, I can say that in this environment, he's got about $2 to $3 million in fines. In this environment, he may have about $5 million in fines. In this, what are you talking about? I didn't know that. Well, I know you didn't know that, that's what I'm telling you. I'm your consultant. I'm their consultant. My job is to explain this. And guess what? The manufacturers start talking about this and backs up the consultant. All of a sudden, the architect's wondering, oh, maybe he's right. Maybe I shouldn't have just, implemented a crazy solution, right? That doesn't make sense in any way, shape, or form. So, compliance that drives security in a smart building, smart cities environment. NERC SIP 14, energy utilities, FERC, government grid energy, HIPAA high trust, medical industry financial, PCI, retail industry and financial, FMSA, food safety management, industry and food industry, TAPA, logistics and distribution, CFATS, petrochemical manufacturing, ISO 27001, manufacturing, GLBA, FINRA, financial and professional services, GDPR, all industries. That is a roadmap that you can use to fulfill the concept of liability as you talk about the effects of business operations, compliance, and the use of technology. You are future-proofing your client to ensure that they're on a roadmap that puts them in a defensible position in a desired state that lowers their optimal level of risk. Only giving you the facts. I'm going to give you these slides also. So, by the way, anybody who knows me, I'll send you the files. Okay? Don't have to worry about it. I'll get you everything you need. Oh boy, here we go. Now we're going to talk about something that all of you are deathly afraid of, because all you have no clue, or some of you do, what cloud really means. So here's the thing. SaaS, software as a service, okay, PaaS and IaaS. So I want you, IaaS. So I want you to study those so you understand them. Go to NIST, and so go to NIST. There is actually a guideline around all of this that I want you to read. Spend the time. This is your world. You live in it. Everything's in the cloud. You mean everything? Everything. We're no longer living in an RS-485 world. We're not living in a one-dimensional connection, guys. It's over. Day's over. Us jerks came in and ruined it for all of you. But here's the point. You have to understand, from business intelligence, development, testing, integration, application, database, document management, collaboration, each one has a set of things it does. SaaS models, these are all the things that affect the business. Guess where physical security is? In each one of them. In fact, cameras, access control tied to databases, sensors, operational technology sensors are all connected to this world. So, some people say, well, it's cloud, I'm safe. So here's the problem with all that, ladies and gentlemen. APIs in general, developed by a manufacturer, are positioned to help and support that one product. Not really there to support all these other products. They will interconnect. They'll be happy to bring them in. But here's the problem. Unless you've done complete vulnerability assessments on all your applications and cloud-based solutions, you know where your data at rest is. Data at rest meaning all the data that's being produced by these wonderful machines you've just put in the field, and you know where they are, and you know the app developer who created them, who built them with security, and you've created a methodology to ensure that all your credentials and all your passwords are consistently changing, you are unsecure. And this woman will probably hack into you tomorrow, since she's a PhD in cybersecurity. So here's the thing, right? I know you're all saying to me, but you're ruining my birthday party. I says, yeah, well, I'm not. I'm educating you so that you can go to NIST SP 500-292 and educate your clients so that they understand the liability they may assume if they don't do testing and vulnerability assessments in the environment that you now are giving them advice to use. If you like the cake, then eat it. Don't just give the cake to someone else. Because remember what happened to her. She was that beautiful queen in France, ended up dying a hateful death. Cloud architecture. So most of you are saying, how does this all work? Well, unfortunately, it's not as simple as everybody thinks. Cloud consumer, cloud provider. Within the cloud provider, cloud orchestration, service layers of all three, one or the other, okay? Resource abstraction and contract layer, or control layer, excuse me. Physical layer, which is the hardware, and the facility, which is in fact where you all live. So this little piece right here, that's your world. See how small it is? But guess what? It's in this world. Cloud service management, business support, provisioning, and portability. Now, fascinating, right? See these guys right here? These guys are the guys are your worst enemy. They are going to ensure that when they do an assessment across the entire infrastructure, that is not vulnerable. They're going to do a physical security vulnerability assessment as well as a cyber physical assessment within the cyber realm, and they're going to define, is your product secured enough to be in the cloud that I have? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say what? No. Then there's the cloud broker, and this is where the big problem is for all of you. You're buying all these apps, and guess what ends up happening? The cloud broker is selling you those apps happily. They could care less about all this. Hey, they just want to sell it. They want to create a service agreement with you. They want to make sure you're on the hook. And that's why the SaaS machine works. That's why if you look at companies who've gone SaaS, have made billions when they sell their company, because guess what? It's the easiest way to take a hard thing and be able to give it to a client and say, wow. So if you're a manufacturer who's using a third-party SaaS solution within your environment and you're selling it to a critical infrastructure company, beware, make sure you've done your testing. Some have, some haven't. That's not my job, but it is my job to make sure you guys are going to be secure and safe for the public. Indeed, they presented their architecture largely in the context of the different deployment models, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, understanding the relationship and interdependencies between the different cloud computing and deployments, models, and service models is critical to understand the security risk involved in cloud computing. Now, I know it's really tough to understand, but it means basically you're all liable for the risk that exists if you use these solutions without ensuring that they're protected. Make sense? Convergence, cyber, and physical security. This has already taken place. We all understand it. Integration of technology blends risk. We all know this. Defining the convergence of technology in the cloud. So you know how we talked about it's all happening, this 15 years ago, IT. Guess what? This is happening in the cloud now, right? So all of the interconnection between cyber and physical is now happening in the cloud. That's why there's a blossoming of physical security products in the cloud. These services, these SaaS solutions are growing. But that's where the problem is that now we're seeing this in the cloud environment. And so now we have to create rules and processes, which you find in NIST. And that is what the IT department is using to say no to you. Convergence of cyber and physical, people, process, and technology understand that the correlation between all three, meaning the people who not only use but also manage security, the process and policy procedures, and the technology are also in the cloud. So there's a new layer that is even more complicated because guess what? Cyber has been doing this for close to 20 years, 25 years. We've started in the last 5. So now all the cyber guys are going, well, we're just going to hack, break, and test all your equipment, and we're going to make sure that it doesn't touch our network or our cloud. That's why this is happening. I'm giving you the answer. You wanted to know? That's why. Converged security and safety in a smart cities environment, smart buildings environment. So it's important to understand. IT, OT, physical security, in all 3 arenas, these are the sets that we are concerned about. We're concerned about network architecture. How are we going to ensure we support this environment with all these products? IT, OT, physical security. Segmentation. We want to ensure that they're segmented, but I don't want to know that you just have a VLAN around your environment. I want to know true segmentation. Because a VLAN, if you have an open port in an OT environment, and I ping it because I'm trying to maintain it, and it pings back with a virus that I put into it, I'm in your network. In fact, very funny to everyone is that the OT environment is on a flat environment. It says, no, wait a minute, it's segmented. No, because I'm going over the segmented environment and I'm actually taking the data and I'm playing hopscotch. I'm just jumping those VLANs, right? There you go. PhD saying yes, so I'm agreeing with her. Access control and video management, critical and most critical to understand that this resides in every arena. Access identity to entry. Access identity, what's access control? Permissions granted or denied. What is it connected to? What? Is it security? Yeah, security gets it because why? HR put it in. Or at least somebody used it to put it in. Access control company, they threw it in, the integrator put it in. All of a sudden now you have access. What about identity? If I give you my card, here's my card. Now you're not Pierre, but guess what? You've just become me. Because when she walks into a door, she's now registered as me. Is that identity? No. So we go through multi-factor authentication, the definition of biometric, facial recognition. All of this is now coming to fruition. Why? Because you're not put in a defensible position if I simply give a permission and nothing more. Now entry. So we're doing it in the laptop, from the laptop to the IoT device. What are we doing to ensure entry? We're using access, multi-factor authentication, and the entry to an environment to ensure that there's no what? What? Somebody can't piggyback. But guess what? I open the environment, somebody gets on my laptop because I don't know policy and procedures to shut my laptop, right? So what happens at an entry of a building? Oh, but I love the swing doors. Yeah, but guess what? Ding dong. You've got a swing door or a slide door, and you've just opened. You've done the wonderful thing of access identity. Oh, cool. Johnny just got in, but 7 other people just followed him. Way to go. So the reality is this, okay? We're far from perfect. But here's the issue, is that it's in every environment. Compute storage and video storage. Do we understand the difference? Do we understand what this means? Secured storage. Do we also understand that if we're involved in a cloud environment, we must ensure that our clients understand that data at rest doesn't just sit in an unsecured environment? That is your liability. Go to your insurance carrier. That is your liability as a consultant and potentially a manufacturer. Cyber controls across IT, OT, physical security. Well, cyber already gets it. They understand the kill chain, and now they're applying the kill chain to you. And guess what? A lot of you are failing. IDF, MDF, video, and IoT. You have to ask the question, where is all that? Don't just go in and say, I'm just going to run some wire. Know the network drops. Understand what that means. Understand what they're using it for. Understand how they're using it. Understand how they're protecting it. How it's going to be protecting under your environment. How are you protecting your video cameras and infrastructure if you're actually relying on an MDF and IDF to transport data? Ooh, wait a minute. That's a pretty tough question. Guess what? You're involved in that. Managed services, security as a service. Everyone wants to make money. Totally get it. Security as a service is now one of the most important parts to the story because why? Because there's too many, what? Alerts. Why? Because there's too many devices. Why? Because we don't do business operational environment assessments and we don't define the true need of the product and solutions connected to the, it's amazing how it all wraps up together, right? Policy and procedures, talking about the COOP, talking about defining what that is for the client, ensuring they have a roadmap that works. Governance, business environment, HR, finance, operations. I want to know your governance because I want to make sure you guys are communicating. Guess what? If I do an assessment for a client and I know that they're not communicating across the entire business units, there's no communication. Do you think the security is going to be good? You think it's going to be really healthy? You think it's going to work? No. No, N-O, you're just putting another Band-Aid for a 7-year cycle. And maybe some of you want that, but that's not what I'm looking for. I want you guys to have a 15, 20-year cycle in terms of the processes that changes. We're going to talk about that in a few seconds here. Operational control, SCADA, PLC, business operations software such as SAP, SAP. Solutions when we talk about software solutions globally, right? Do you understand, all of you, that software solutions are not built with security in mind for the most part? Virtually none of them are. Epic, the largest databases of software used for healthcare information. Did you know that Epic is not built with security? In fact, it goes to their clients and says, well, we're not securing this, you secure it, because they don't want to hold the liability. Oh. And you're supposed to put what? Cameras and infrastructure? I says, how can we use Epic? I says, let's put this all in an infrastructure. It says, hey, hold on, slow down. It says, do you want to attach yourself to a liability? I don't. Cloud security, IT, OT, physical security. We talked about cloud security. NIST, go to NIST, learn. Cloud infrastructure, same thing. It's a lot of information, guys. I don't have a lot of time, but I want to tell you that these slides at least will help you in terms of map out. Oh, wait, what did I say there? Define the technology from entry solutions, VMS. Yeah, so all that stuff. So here's the thing. We talked about 10 minutes. Perfect. Yeah, we're almost done. So here's the interesting part. We talk about products, okay? Now when you look at this, you can put products into this matrix. You can actually say, well, this is actually part of their schematic. This is defining part of the roadmap because you now know how it affects what. And then what's funny is that when you start asking about the product, you start saying, was it a cloud-based solution? Is it infrastructure? Is it have compute? Do you have information that's being processed? Where is it coming from? See all the questions you start asking? And they're all involving your field. Physical security and cybersecurity and operational technology security is all in your field today. So hourglass of convergence, at the end of the day, right? Threats are here. Converged deployment of security practices are here. This is security, this is risk. The biggest problem that we've always had is we've lived in this environment under security. We've never breached it to business risk. And when we did, all we did is take the vulnerabilities and threats that came from IT, OT, physical security, which are down here, and what we did is we tied them to business risk. That's as far as we went. We didn't understand that above this is compliance and regulation that also affected the decision-making process, and then above this is enterprise risk that was pushing down that actually we had to be aware of because we had to understand between finance, operations, and every environment that all this interconnected so that we could actually do what? Propose the right technology to ensure that the client wasn't going to fail. Because all of these threats pass through every one of these. So any human being that passes through any of these environments creates a threat and vulnerability. Every single time. You would say, no, that's not possible. Yes, every single, it doesn't matter the level. It happens. Now, if a threat and vulnerability is tied to a business risk, we create liability. Immediately now we have something to talk about because in the past, we were merely talking about security and risks. Threat time vulnerability equal countermeasure. We were countermeasuring this on a consistent basis and putting us in a death cycle. Cyber went through it. In fact, it only figured it out about, well, 7 years ago, maybe less. 10 years ago, it started realizing, wait a minute, we got to get up here. And then we have to do a full risk assessment to define their environment. So we can't just do, we call it an infosec, we have to go beyond it. Because the breach is what we're concerned about. At the end of the day, you know, converged deployments of security maximizes risk management. And that's what we're talking about. It's much more in depth, but I unfortunately don't have a lot of time. So this is important. I think this is the last slide. Yep. So here's what's important, guys. All right. Acceptable level of risk, time, current state. Okay. Most people want to know a current state assessment. What does the assessment come in with all of you right here? You guys are giving them an idea of, hey, where do you fit in regards to the problem? How do you define your acceptable level of risk? Right now, I own 80% of the risk, right? Because I don't know. So you're going to help me define those risks, and you're going to start building a roadmap. But here's the first thing they're going to tell you. I don't have the resources, I don't have the time, and I'm not interested in a lot of change, and I sure don't have the money. So he's telling you all the problems you know about. What's the problem here? The problem here is you can't get to this and build a roadmap, a strategic roadmap, because he doesn't have the money. So what you do is you give him the results of the assessment. He starts trying to fix these in a tactical way. What happens half the time after 3 to 5 years? Because we gave him security technology that was just based upon these factors, and we didn't really give them and look into the business operational side, the compliance side, the regulations, and we didn't give them reasons to actually go to a desired state that he needed to get to because you didn't offer it, he ended up going back to a deteriorated state, and guess what? 7 years later, he was back in the same place. Every one of you have been the benefits, if you're a manufacturer, the consultants, a headache of after 5 years, they come back and says, you never did anything. I told me that you were going to fix this. You were going to help me with this. I'm back in the same place. The technology is already antiquated. The systems aren't working, and everything's just inappropriate. Well, here's the problem. Unless you give them the dynamic evolution of where we are today in terms of all the smart buildings, smart cities environments that we've talked about, technology, business environment, the business processes, the compliance, and give them that roadmap in a report that really aligns the technology, then you can't get to the strategic remediation of the problem to get him in a position that he can actually accept. So the reality is this: I want to get them to a desired state through doing all of this, so all the stuff we just talked about. And then I want to be able to create some metrics that align him to understand how to stay there. Because then I can use the proper technologies that great manufacturers are creating to make sure that my client stays in a secure state across time. Because the last thing I want is to not do, I say check, act, plan, do. It's a Deming cycle. This is a reverse Deming cycle. These are the appropriate ways to continuously improve a client. This is going to be continuous. You're going to be doing this forever if you do it right. And the beautiful part of this is this, ladies and gentlemen, is that in this model, if you do it correctly, you'll not only be positioned for the smart buildings and smart cities revolution, but you will be positioning yourself to build secured communication, secured identity, secured entry, and secured storage, which is really what's going on right now, because you can have the best environments in the world, but if you don't have these 4 things, you got squat. You have to build all these in to your processes. And with that, are there any more questions? Yes?
Well, I think that you expanded the roles of us play quite a bit. Some of us are uncomfortable in that role. I think our role, or at least mine, hello. At least mine is to evolve a design of a system. I have a scope of work, and the scope of work does not cover a lot of the things you mentioned, but it does in terms of my professional liability, it does include it up to the scope of my work. Now, if I say, okay, you plug a camera in, and you plug it into the nearest nearest IP connection that your company provides for you, I follow that IP connection down. Where's the cable? Where does it terminate? What about the backup power for the PoE switch? Yada yada yada. But how does it integrate with the building objectives? The lead issues and things like that. Can you turn on the lights and that sort of thing? So everybody here, I think, has a scope of work, and their scope of work covers the preparation for these things, but not necessarily going all the way up, to cover the things globally.
So that's a good question, but here's the thing. So what I would recommend, and I mean this sincerely, that anyone who has a scoped agreement that basically requires these things, you have to ask questions to ensure that you lower your potential liability, especially if you're building a contract. Exactly. And so the problem is that there's an assumption that's going to be held today that you understand this stuff. And what's going to happen is that if you don't put this in your legal contract, speak to your attorney, then speak to a third-party provider in regards to cybersecurity potential liabilities in this contract. Actually look at this contract from the standpoint of cyber liability. You will be potentially at risk.
I have all that in mind.
Good. So that protects you. But here's most importantly, is when you design those solutions, the things I'm asking you to do, I didn't say to do them all, but I would say that anything that touches something that is going to help the client, you must make them aware of it at least. And when you ask the right questions, they're going to realize that there may be a need for a scope change in regards to the process, or that they need you to speak collaboratively with not only the stakeholders, but also the people doing the other assessments. That's all I'm saying.
This goes through specifications too.
Correct. You got it. Absolutely. That's what I'm trying to say, is that this is everybody's problem. So what I'm saying is that you need to be aware that this evolution or revolution is taking place, and it's a paradigm shift for everyone. So I'm not saying that overnight we're going to be able to do that, but I'm going to tell you right now that light switch is already turned on. The room is got light, and you can't use the excuse that it's dark anymore. That's just the problem. Yeah. So as long as you understand that, this is why we're here. to educate you to be prepared, not to say, I cannot make you do these things. It's all yours to take, the next step. In fact, I don't even, converged gap assessments and all that are done, but the reality is that in this world, you hold your own risk in doing your work. You have to position yourself to be defensible. And when you build products and solutions, you must partake in this and really understand where it's going, because this, and some of you are doing a great job. Don't get me wrong. I know the guys in the room who are here, and they are doing a great job. But I'm just telling you, when you go to IC East and you go to IC West and you go to As Is and you see all these disparate devices and products that are out there in the marketplace, buyer beware. Buyer beware. You building an app that is on quicksand, buyer beware. It's yours, it's your responsibility. And so in the world we're living in, I just want you to be at rest that this is the stuff that's out there. It's all there for you to use. Thank you very much.